Good day. Welcome to the Lymphatic and Immune System Bio30. Today we're going to talk about how your body is trying to defend itself and a couple of other features with this lymphatic system. We're going to look at it in three different parts. First off, we're going to try understanding what the lymphatic and immune system is. Then we're going to learn a couple of ways of how it works. And then lastly, we're going to learn about what really goes wrong when things don't work. So, without further ado, let's take a look at this lymphatic system. So, just an example of a piece of your lymphatic system. In our digestive unit, we talked about the villi and the microvilli, and there's an image like this one that you saw, and you would have seen this yellow hair-like material on the inside of a villi or inside of a villus called a lacteal, which is a part of your immune system. And that's because your lacteals are going to help you with absorbing fats. We shouldn't have fats in our bloodstream so much, so it's nice that we have the lacteals to do this for us. We also have the ability to return these excess fluids in our body back into the bloodstream. So if you ever have an injury, you notice some swelling in your body, something has to get rid of that swelling, and it's your lymphatic system that's going to do this. What we tend to connect the lymphatic system to is this third point, which is defense against disease. So whenever you get some sort of illness, it's typically your lymphatic system that helps you out with that, and that's true. But there are other features that we should be aware of also. Being that it's a body system, we should try to understand what various networks are in this lymphatic system. So we've got this one-way system, very similar to your blood network that you have in your body. You've got this squamous epithelium tissue that surrounds each of these vessels. And the vessels are going to contain a fluid that we like to call lymph or lymphatic fluid. It's basically blood without the blood cells, without the erythrocytes or the leukocytes typically, or the thrombocytes, but it carries things, mostly water, nutrients, electrolytes, various hormones, and that sort of thing. And when you have those vessels, you start off with capillaries, which are the narrowest of the vessels. You bring them together to create what we are more generally referring to as lymphatic vessels. You take these vessels and converge them together, you get what are called ducts. We have two major ducts, one called the thoracic duct, which is on the left side of your body, and that's going to cover the lymphatic fluids from your head, the left side of your body, and anything below the thorax. You also have your right lymphatic duct, which is on the right side of your body. It doesn't do as much work. It takes everything from the right side of your head and your right arm. So it still does some work, but not as much as your thoracic duct. A couple of images of what the lymphatic system looks like. So you can see on the female image here, everything that's green is a part of your lymphatic system. One difference is you can see the subclavian veins here as well. This is where your ducts are going to empty into. And then on the other image here on the male, you can see this orange network is your lymphatic system. So you can see it's very, very, very large. It's all over your body. You can see a couple of clusters of these little pockets in a couple of areas here as well. That's for your immune system. We're going to talk about that very, very soon here. So with the structures themselves, you have what are called small and large vessels. The small ones are just small vessels of squamous epithelium. The large ones are very similar to veins. They're going to have these valves to prevent any backflow, and they're going to be controlled by muscles to help them pump, because this network does not have a centralized heart to pump things along. They have to use these skeletal muscles instead. Occasionally, when you have an injury, you might get some swelling, and we like to call that an edema. And this is just an excess amount of fluid that has built up in some part of your body. There's not enough drainage, or there's too much fluid being produced. That's when you get some swelling. Typically, your lymphatic system will clean that up. We get concerned if it doesn't get cleaned up for a period of time, then we're worried that you might get some tissue damage or tissue death happening in that situation. That's why your doctor might ask you, "Hey, how long have you seen the swelling for?" We're just trying to make sure that you haven't had a prolonged edema. Now, the organs are specialized components of your lymphatic system. These are going to contain lymphatic cells called lymphocytes. They're produced both in the thymus and the bone marrow. Thymus is this organ that's going to be near your breastbone by your sternum, and your bone marrow is the fluid, that connective tissue inside of your bones, especially your large bones. We've got B lymphocytes, which are going to produce antibodies, and we have T lymphocytes, which are going to help us with cellular immunity. Well, let's take a look at a couple of those organs, starting off with your primary organs. We have two systems, a primary and secondary system. Red bone marrow falls into your primary system. Um, this is where you're going to have your B lymphocytes mature, and it's just inside of your bones and in your sinuses. You also got what's called your thymus, as mentioned. That's by your sternum, by your breastbone. It gets smaller as you get a little bit older. You got these different lobes, one on either half, and they are filled with T lymphocytes. This is where the T lymphocytes are going to be produced and then matured as well. After the primary organs, we've got what are called your secondary organs. These are going to, well, not these, but lymphocytes are going to find antigens in your secondary organs. This is where your immune system is really going to go to work. Your primary organs essentially produce the cells, and your secondary organs house where the action actually happens. So, spleen is in your abdomen. This is one of the secondary organs that we have. And then another one would be your lymph nodes. These are all throughout your body. That's what those clusters look like on those images before. We have three different major clusters of these. You have your cervical ones, which are your neck region. You've got your axillary ones, which are in your armpits. And then you've got your inguinal ones, which cover your groin. So any illness or disease that tries to get into or spread in your body, they get siphoned into one of these nodes and then get beaten down. So here you can see a couple of images of the vessels. On the right side here, you can see a node where the vessels empty into, and all these white clusters here are going to be various lymphocytes. So pathogen gets into a node, gets beaten down by these lymphocytes, and then the fluid continues forwards. Now, with our bodies, we have a couple of different ways of defending from various illnesses that we get. First one is called a non-specific defense, where it just coincidentally defends our body. It's a secondary action of a different organ or a different part of our body. For example, your skin. Your skin is there to protect your entire body, right? But if there's a pathogen trying to get into your body, it has to get through your skin first. So your skin ends up being a barrier to preventing these things from getting in. Also, inflammatory reactions are reactions that you can get where there's some redness, your skin gets flush, you might swell a bit, you might feel some pain. This is also going to be some sort of non specific defense, slowing down the rate that the pathogen can move in your body, cooks it to death, cause you to itch it out, those sorts of things. If you have an inflammatory reaction, it's because there's a chemical in your body that's activating your blood vessels to vasodilate. This is a chemical called histamine. You might have heard of over the counter antihistamines, which are to block the histamine in your body. Histamine is produced in these mast cells, and if mast cells are triggered by some sort of allergen or some sort of antigen, they'll release the histamine into your body, and that's what's going to cause the inflammation. When that happens, you get phagocytes coming into this area that's been damaged, and there's different kinds of those phagocytes that are available. You have neutrophils, monocytes, dendritic cells, macrophages, and if they ever escape your body and they can't get in, they might end up dying out, and that's what we call pus. So with an inflammatory reaction, a couple of things that can happen in addition to the inflammation. You could get a clot forming, you can get some other specific defenses that are activated. So non-specific starts everything off, and then if it's pretty serious, then your specific defenses can kick in. Some people have a condition called chronic inflammation, where it's inflammation that always seems to exist, like they can't really get away from it. If that's the case, you might get some sort of medication to help you out. Aspirin, if you're older, it's a blood thinner. You can get an NSAID, which is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. So that's to prevent your body from getting inflammation. Or you can get some actual steroidal treatments like cortisone, which we can make. It's very similar to testosterone, which is steroid in the body, or cortisol, which is also naturally produced. So a couple of options that we have if we really need to. We have those options available to us. Okay, so just an image. I should have moved my picture on the other side here so you can see the image of a mast cell releasing histamine. You can see your monocytes are trying to attack and clean up the injury. You got a macrophage trying to grab all the pathogen cells that are there. You have free-ending nerves, which are located all throughout your body, so that's why you feel the pain when these sorts of things happen. Now, with non-specific defenses, you've also got what are called natural killer cells. These are cells that are designed to basically destroy anything that they come in contact with. So they're quite large. They touch, they destroy if they feel like it's not supposed to be there. Great for cancer cells because cancer cells don't, they end up in places they're not supposed to. So your killer cells will destroy those. Unfortunately, these killer cells have no memory. So they might kill something and then not remember it later on. So you don't have immunity from certain illnesses. You just got to hope that you have enough killer cells to tackle these sorts of ailments in your body. Another non-specific defense that you can run into is a complement system. This comes from protective proteins, and this is quite fascinating, where there's a group of plasma proteins that can pry open a hole into a bacterium. They can amplify this inflammatory response, and they can fill in that bacterium or pathogen with fluids and salts until it pops from the inside. It does so by creating this membrane attack complex, which opens a hole into that bacterium or pathogen. It allows for all these fluids to come in, and then eventually, when that cell gets too large, it ends up popping, it becomes lysed. So here you can see a membrane complex being formed by the complement proteins. So you can see the membrane attack complex makes a little bit of a hole. The fluids and salts are going to come in, and eventually the bacterium is going to expand and it's going to pop. Tried to animate it here for you as well, where you can see the complement proteins coming onto the bacterium. Eventually, you have these membrane attack complexes forming. When the membrane attack complexes have formed, you have all these fluids and salts from various parts around the bacterium, which are now able to enter the bacterium. And eventually, that bacterium will pop because it gets too large. And that brings us into the second portion of our lymphatic and immune system. So we're going to pause here, and then we'll pick up on the second part in our next video.